So I've just taken a screenshot of this because I like the look of it. So I'm going to recreate this in Vectric. I'm going to put the dimensions in. So I want to create 2 of these hangers. Put in the job size, which is 430 by 430. That's the size of my stock. And the thickness of the stock is 17.9. I'm going to take our Z0 position off the machine bed. Let's go ahead and do that. And before we get started, I want to create a couple of layers. I'm going to go to the layers tab. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to call this one guides. And we'll create another one and call that profile. Give it a different color. And we will go to our guides layer, make that active. Back to drawing, and create a rectangle half the size of our stock, so that's 430 by 215, and we'll create another one to help us align things later. And let's move this box relative to that box down to the bottom edge, so we'll use that to align that. Actually, let's go and change this box here. Instead of making it 430 width, let's make it 400. We don't want this to be right on the edge when we start making it, so let's make a guideline over here. So we'll create a line here, and we'll make it start on X minus 200, and let's go up, say 23 mils, which will make it Y 169, and we want that to be 400. Yeah, it looks right. And let's add another one a little bit further down, so that's going to be, instead of minus 169, let's make it minus 192, and same width, or same length I should say. There we go. Okay, let's say finish, close. Let's bring in our image of the thing we want to copy. Choose the mountain rack. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to resize it so that edge and that edge meets up with that edge and that edge. It doesn't have to be exact, but try to get as close as possible. I'm just going to make that bigger. Let's move it down, and we'll slowly get it into position. Getting close now. Oh, there we go. That looks perfect to me, almost perfect, so I'm happy with that. Let's do our dial holes. I know the dials we're going to be using is 19 mils, so we will go to our draw a circle tool. Let's get this to snap right to the middle of our object, and our dials are 19, so we're making it 19.1 mils. That will allow for a little bit of glue in there when we put the dials in. And let's do another one where it looks good. Let's say, I would say around about there. Yeah, that looks good to me. Let's close this and let's mirror this one to that side. So we'll select that and we will go to our mirror tool, which is that. So let's move these 3 circles to their own layer. So we'll move to layer and we'll call that the main layer, layer 1. Delete this line, we don't need it any longer. And let's trace out the outline, draw line, polyline. Let's snap it to the, or let's actually make this a bit bigger so we can actually see what we're doing. I'm going to snap it to that point. You can always, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we can get it close to where we want it. We can always adjust this afterwards just using the little nodes in our node edit mode. and snap it to that point over there, and it's just that. Just click on that and press N for node editing, and let's adjust any of these. That one there definitely needs some adjusting. I'm going to zoom in there, just dragging it, getting it somewhere. That looks good. Let's have a look. Yeah, that looks good. That one looks good. Maybe adjust this one a little bit there. I like that. Before we do anything, let's copy this outline. So let's go out of node editing mode, pressing N, and select that. We're going to copy this to the profile layer so we can cut it out at the end. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to say copy to layer profile, and now go back to our draw polyline and let's trace out the shape of these peaks. I'm going to take the line right to there, because I don't want it to finish there and then have a little bit of a gap here. So I'm going to take it right, snap it to that point, finish that one off. Do the same for this one. Start it about there. Snap, snap, snap. That one we'll have to just adjust, and then snap it to that point again. Finish that one out. Same with this one. Snap, snap. And let's do this one from here, this way. Snap. Snap it to that point there. We've got to fix a couple of these, so let's zoom in here, click on the line, N for node, and let's fiddle with these a little bit and get them a place that we're happy with. And I'm going to do that one over a little bit like that. Yeah, so you can take your time with this and get it perfect. I want to try and get that line to be at the same angle as this line, or this line to be the same angle as that line. So let's just get it close. Yeah, that looks good to me. I'm happy with that one. And let's just do this one here. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's switch off our bitmap layer. Okay, that looks good. You can see that this is on our guide layer, so let's move that onto the main layer. Click on that, that, right click, move to layer 1. Okay, so now if we get rid of that, yeah, that's on layer 1. And we get rid of the guides. I've got our own profile, and we've got our objects over there. So what we're going to do, go to our profile, click on it, right click, and this time we are going to copy it to our layer 1. We will switch off our profile, go to our layer 1, and now back to our drawing tool, and we are going to cut away the lines and join these, so we've got our individual pockets that we are going to be able to cut out and later fill with epoxy while we're making this. So I'm going to go to the interactive trim tool, and we're going to just trim away the lines that we don't want. It's rejoin sections is ticked, so let's just check that. If we click on these, they are now connected. That's exactly what we want. Perfect. Then what we're going to do is go to layers. We're going to switch on our profile layers as well, and we are going to select everything here, edit, copy, edit, paste, and then we'll just move them up. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's create our toolpaths. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Click on toolpaths. I'm going to pin it. First we want to do pockets, so I'm going to select the pockets. Let's get rid of our profiles so we don't click on them accidentally. And we'll select that, 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 that. We want to pocket. We're going to be using, let's use a standard animal, and we want to go down to Z all the way. We don't want to go all the way through the material. We want to go about, leave about 0.5 millimeter of material at the bottom, so Z minus 0.5, and we can do a little ramp move if we want to. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, let's preview that. Then we'll come in and we will pocket these as well. I'll use a separate toolpath. I'll say pocket again, and we want to go down on these, let's say 15 mils should be fine. Calculate. Let's preview that. And then lastly, we are going to profile this. So let's switch on our profile layer. We're going to select that profile, choose our profile toolpath. We want our cut depth to be Z all the way through. We want our tool and we are going to be cutting on the outside. That's correct, and we don't need, we can do a ramp, smooth ramp, and we will add some tabs. So let's add these tabs manually. Length to, I don't want them to be 3D because I'm going to clean them up with the trim router at the end. So let's edit our tabs. Let's just place them not where the epoxy is going to be. So I'm going to do one there, I'll do one there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. Same on this side, or on this piece I should say. There, 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 and there. Close. Let's calculate that. Let's preview it. Perfect. Let's go through the steps. So let's reset everything here. First up, we're going to create our pockets for the epoxy. Preview that. We'll mix up some epoxy. We'll add some colors, some dye, maybe some colored gloss. We'll wait 36 hours for them to dry. Surface this flat, as you'll see in the video. And then once that's done, we will run our toolpath for the dowels. And finally, we'll run our profile toolpath and cut the part out. Let's get to making it.
This is 600 by 45. Yep. Yep. 30 and 30. That's perfect. Perfect. Dead center. Come back to our UCCNC over here, and we will say that we are going to zero our X, zero our Y. Now we're in the middle of our work material, and now that's all that's left is to do a tool change. Take this one out. And blow this one out with some compressed air. Pop it in. Pop it in. Okay, start. Load file. Go to our project directory. There's our first file. There it is. Now we just have to get our Z height. In this project, we're going to take Z from the machine bed, and we're going to plug in our probe. And we're going to take our Z height off the machine bed. We're going to just pop that down there, plug our probe into the machine, at the back over here. Okay, so now we're going to probe off the machine surface, and we'll just bring our probe underneath and go back to UCCNC, click the probe Z button. It's going to ask us to check for continuity. It'll beep and begin probing. That's it. Now we remove our probe, and when we're ready to start, we will click the cycle start button.
Now what I like to do before we press cycle start is to reduce the feed rate down to about 50%. Listen to how well it's handling the cutting, and if we're happy, we just increase the speed on the fly to 100% or even faster if the job warrants it. Now that everything is ready, we're going to click our cycle start button.
Increase our speed back to 100%, and let's zoom into our model.
And then I increase the feed rate to 150%. As you can see, we're going all the way down to 1/2 mil from the bottom, and this will be a nice little pocket to contain our epoxy when we pour it. Okay, I'm mixing up some epoxy here in a 2:1 ratio, ensuring that it is thoroughly mixed. I mix for about 2 to 3 minutes, filling the pockets with colored glass. And it's important to get the glass below the surface because you don't want to hit it with the end mill when you're surfacing or you're cutting the part out, because that could damage the end mill. Epoxy, when it cures, it actually shrinks, so it's better to overfill than underfill. Even though this is clear epoxy, I love how each pocket takes on the color of the stones that are inside it. It really looks like it's been colored, but it actually hasn't. For the second mountain hanger, I'm using colored epoxy that has pigment powder added, which creates a rich pearlescent luster. And here I'm using a heat gun to pop the bubbles that come to the surface. You may need to do this a couple of times because as you pop some, more will come up. And now I'm just pushing any of the glass particles below the surface. And here I'm adding pearlescent flakes to create a shimmer and sparkle on the surface. I'll leave this for a while, and when the epoxy is tacky, I will mix up another batch and pour a layer of clear epoxy on the surface to lock these particles in. This is important because when the epoxy has cured and the surface is flattened, the particles will be removed if they ride on the surface. Now I'm changing the bit to a surfacing bit, and this time we are going to take the Z height off the surface of the material and not off the surface of the machine bed, because we want to go down just enough to flatten the epoxy so we can sand it. And I'll keep incrementing the depth of this surfacing pass by 1/2 millimeter until all the epoxy is removed from the surface. I would normally keep doing this until even the epoxy that has soaked into the surface is removed. But because we have glass particles close to the surface, I was very nervous about going too deep. I would normally do this with dust collection on, but I'm doing this now so you can actually watch the surfacing in action. It's also very important to wear a respirator when working with epoxy, and to wait for the epoxy to totally cure for about 36 hours before attempting to surface it, or else you will probably chip it because it hasn't been cured properly yet. Here you can see the progressive passes as I go deeper and deeper. You'll continue doing this until it is totally flat and no high spots remain. After it was completely flat, I sanded down to about 600 grit with an orbital sander. Here I'm swapping back to a 3.175mm end mill and taking the Z height from the surface of the material. First I load the toolpaths for the dowel rod and then the profile cuts. Here I'm pausing the program mid-cycle using feed hold to clear chips and then resuming cutting again. We're using tabs here to secure the workpiece to the table, and we'll cut through that once this is completed using an oscillating multi-tool. Here I'm removing the clamps, and next I'm going to use a trim router to remove the tabs and round over all the edges. I'm doing this on the top and the bottom of each piece. If I had to do this project again, I think I would seal the pockets with some epoxy by brushing a little bit on before I do the pour to seal it and to stop bubbles from coming out of the wood while it's curing. I would also go much deeper with the surfacing bit and make sure that I've removed all of the epoxy that has sunk into the wood on the surface, which is still visible in the final project. And here I'm applying a single coat of spray satin varnish, which brings the epoxy right out. I did this about 2 or 3 times per piece. And here I am cutting dowel rod to length. Got a little piece of painter's tape wrapped around the cutting portion to prevent the saw from chipping out the surface. And here I'm just rounding over the edge using the belt sander and getting rid of sharp corners before I do the glue up. Just using a bit of wood glue and hammering them to depth with a rubber mallet. And once they're all in, I clean up the squeeze out with a damp paper towel. When cutting the dowel rods, I cut them to 80mm in length, which leaves about 65mm above the surface, which to me looks like the right length. And finally, the dowel rods are finished off using beeswax and linseed oil paste. This gives them nice protection and brings out their color.